Hi, I'm Mandy Suzanne Wong, author of Drafts of a Suicide Note, a novel published by Regal House Publishing in October 2019. This book is an Indie Next Generation Book Award winner, an IPPY Award winner, a finalist for the Forward Indies Book of the Year Award, the American Book Fest Best Book Award for Fiction, the Islands Book Award, and the Permafrost Book Prize, as well as a PEN Open Book Award nominee. I'm reading to you from the mid-Atlantic island of Bermuda, where my novel is set, and which is also my home and native country. Now, Drafts of a Suicide Note, gentle warning, really is about suicide and suicide notes. The protagonist becomes obsessed with the 10 suicide notes of Etna Simmons, a Bermudian woman who has vanished. The protagonist thinks about her writings wryly at first, dark humor being typical of him. But the more he studies them, the more he not only mourns this total stranger, Etna Simmons, but even allows her memory to change his life. I wrote this story in hope of encouraging compassion and patience for those, ourselves included, who suffer from disappointment, depression, and thoughts of self-harm. I wonder what to call you. You spirit, you disembodied creature, you dear, sweet, tantalizing phantom. You're not just whatever designated word, whatever fleshless prefab vision is bound to fail you, even though all words are as enthralling and slippery as specters. As for me, everything in me amounts to the great void of the question we failed to ask. Everything I am is falling in that chasm, as if through the unrelenting emptiness of distant space that defies all knowledge. I am the question, and I am falling through it, the question of what we are. If you were always already gone and ghostly, can it be that everything you said is true? What strange gravity set us in the same orbit and moved us against each other? Missing woman leaves 10 suicide notes. I found it in an email digest from Burr News. The Royal Gazette led with the same story. In connection with Etna Simmons of Suffering Lane, St. George's, who was reported missing by her landlady last week Monday, a BPS spokesperson said, police can confirm that a stack of 10 documents was found in Miss Simmons' home. The content of these documents brings us to the unfortunate conclusion that Miss Simmons chose to end her life. End quote. One suicide note is an unfortunate conclusion. 10 is no conclusion, but the opposite. 10 suicide notes? That's a provocation. As far as I know, you can only die once. What kind of gross excess is this? 10 different suicide notes or 10 replicas of the same? Vulgar excess or feverish excess? Is there a difference between vulgar and feverish? Say it's 10 of the same, like birth announcements, invitations to a soiree, a newsletter for friends and family. Some people do that in lieu of Christmas cards. Quote, the Bermuda Police Service extends our gratitude to those who may have considered assisting in the island-wide search, which will be postponed until further notice. End quote. Say the documents are all different. 10 unique suicide notes. Why not 9, like the Muses? What's so great about 10? An even number, 5 plus 5, stroke and circle, 10 fingers, 10 commandments, 10 Egyptian plagues. Why bother with 1, let alone 10? So you take leave of the living under a cloud of misunderstanding. What do you care now that you're dead? And the article said stack, meaning paper documents, not on a computer. Why go to that kind of trouble? Before killing yourself, you'd have to go to the post office, stand in line. Good afternoon, I need some 35-cent stamps. Oh, but this one's going overseas. I thought about this a lot. Driving to work, parking in my exclusive spot, being gentle with the door on my MG, green and seductive as jealousy in springtime. My job was to feed unwanted documents to an industrial shredder, so it's not like I had a lot to think about. 10 suicide notes. What does that even look like? Glass panes in a skyscraper? Pieces of ruined church lying down on each other as they crumble? Dear friends. But you may not have friends if you are writing this kind of note. Dear unfeeling world, up yours. Signed sincerely. Etna Simmons left 10 unique suicide notes at Suffering Lane. Altogether, they form a corpus, but in the most telling hypothesis, they're also a sequence in which each successive document replaces the one before, a series of drafts. You know, a document wherein an author is doomed to discover that an unintelligible, even ugly reality has gobbled his or her intentions. This condition, symptomized by wailing and gnashing of teeth, is what writers call a draft. Remedies include the delete key, waste paper basket, and starting over. How do I know all this? I know the 10 final dispatches of Etna Simmons are all different from each other because I arranged to read them. I ordered photocopies with descriptions of the original inks and papers. How'd I get this stuff? Easy. I can get anything I want. The suicide note happens on the threshold of the only empty moment. Yet it comes into its own to a clamor of lawyers, underwriters, creditors, and priests. Its composition proceeds in the most absolute of conscious solitudes, where emptiness eats into words as meaning trickles out. But the creation comes of age only when survivors begin to trawl for signs. This is the paradox of the suicide note, born to public duties, out of sentiments too private to be understood. I value privacy, so I appreciate that Etna Simmons' final words are really none of my business. Till I clicked that Burn News headline, I'd never heard of Etna Simmons, yet I bullied my way into a police station for a peek at her terminal scrolls. Many an hour had I whiled away in my apartment, my cliffside balcony perched on Bermuda's southern curve, watching the ocean change color as it caressed living corals, deep turquoise to midnight blue, silver as the sun moved over to the west, fire colors of an evening. Here in the squawking company of unseen kiskadees, I considered 10 grayscale photocopies. I reread them till the sky was dark. I painted their imagery in hues of my imagination, took their words into my mouth. I understood why the police gave up. 10 suicide notes. My scribbles were vague at best. What the cops had was no better. They didn't know what they were looking for. She told them 10 times over there was nothing worth looking for. You don't know what it took to find an order in these things. I spread out the suicidal encores of Etna Simmons on my desk, on the bed, on the floor, on the sand down on the beach. I moved them around like pieces of a jigsaw. I read them upside down. I read them right side up. I typed them on my computer and moved blocks of text around. I stuck them all to a big piece of cardboard and drew arrows between words with a red pencil. Almost knew them by heart. By the time I felt sure enough to number them, I believe what I call AS1 is the earliest of the 10. It says, "My choices will work on me like poison until my humanity corrodes. They'll work on what's underneath until I am a monster. Maybe my existence amounts to an accumulation of debts, but maybe this is only partly true. I have lived like a shadow. Listen, please. Lately, I've had only one defense. Even then, relief is temporary. I imagine dissolving in water." Thank you.